Hello everybody and welcome to Skyscraper Games. I'm here at the skyscrapergames.com editor. If you haven't already done lessons 1 through 14, you want to go back and do those, or at least grab the code from lesson 14 so that you can follow along with what we're doing. So we're going to be building on that. So first of all, this lesson isn't really probably going to be quick, and it's definitely not a start. But last time we talked a little bit about lists. I wanted to give a little bit of a more extended example of lists that might help clarify how and why to use them, or it might not. But this idea of lists or arrays is probably one of the tougher ideas to get. So if it's confusing to you, that's to be expected. So don't worry about that part of it. Just keep trying to find examples and trying to make your own examples, and at some point it will click. But just as an idea of what a list is. So basically I said before, it's just a collection of things. In Python, those things don't even have to be related or of the same data type. In some languages they do. But I think like some real life examples where a list would make sense would be, for instance, your school schedule. So in your school schedule, you have, whatever it is, 6 or 8 or 9 classes every day. So you have a list of classes. Now every class that's in that list is a little bit different. You've got math, and you've got language arts, and you've got social studies, but they all share sort of common characteristics. You're going to have a certain teacher, maybe the same teacher for all of them, maybe not. You know that they're going to meet for a certain period of time during the day. So you have this general sort of class in school, or a school class, and then each one has specific properties that make it a little bit different from the other ones. So that's just one idea, one example, but what we're going to look at today is how to use a list so that I can make my player actually be a little bit bigger. So when I run my code, my player moves around, and the computer chases and eventually catches it. Alright, so when I'm looking at this model, on the model it looks fine, but if I think about the fact that this model represents this huge 29-story skyscraper, I'm not sure this one little blue dot here is going to be big enough to actually display well when we play my game on that skyscraper. So what I want to do is I want to make this dot, or this player character, actually be 4 dots. Now I could make it an irregular shape or whatever I want. For this example, I'm just going to make it into a square. So I have my player values I've already made into a list. I'm going to actually make this what's called a two-dimensional list now. So to do that, I'm just going to add a new bracket at the beginning, and then a series of bracketed values for x, y values. So 9 and 11 is the first block. So I want to go 1 over on the x. That's going to be 10 and 11. I'll put a comma between those values. And then I want to go down 1. So that'll be 9, 12. And down 1 for the other one. So that'll be 10, 12. So this is just what's called a two-dimensional list that has my values. So my dimension 0 of my list is going to give me 4 pairs of x, y variables. And then within each of those, I'm going to have a 0 and a 1 index. Like I said, pretty confusing. If it doesn't make sense, just follow along and see if it gets better or worse as we go. Alright, so now I want to find everywhere where I've got these player values referenced. And so I think for this one, I think I can just copy this. We'll try it. It might not work. I'm going to just copy those values I have up here, and then so this is where I'm initializing every time a new game starts. I'm just going to say self.playerValues equals. Like I said, we'll see if this works. I think I can just reassign it like that, but we'll find out. If it doesn't, then we'll figure out how to fix it. Alright. Alright, so here's our self.playerValues. Alright. Here's a self.playerValues. So for this one, the X value, I'm going to make it just 0, 0. Now, it's possible that this could create a problem because now, you know, the chaser might actually already have touched my block if it's left or right, but we'll see. We'll see if this works or not. For the Y value, we'll just make that a 0, which means basically I'm still looking at the same dot in my 4 dots. Alright, now for the player to be caught, basically what we want to do is run through and see if any of the 4 dots that we're going to make have been caught. So there's a new expression that we're going to use, which is a for, or a for loop, basically. And because I've made those variables, so let's say for x, y values in self dot. So this basically is just a way to it'll return each individual item in my list, one after the other. So now I can do the same check. I just need to change this from self.playerValues, which is a global variable, to just a local variable, x, y values. Which is just each element of my list. So basically, this is going to loop through, if everything goes right, it's going to loop through 4 times and check each dot to see if the computer has caught any of the dots. Alright. And now down here, when we're drawing it, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to do the for loop. Alright. So, and then again, instead of self.playerValues, it's just going to be my local variable, x, y values. Alright. So now, the last thing to look at is when we move our variable, or when we move our character, our player character. So this should work pretty much the same. What I want to check is I want to think about, alright, so in this first one I'm checking if the y value is making sure it's greater than the y variable. So that can be just my top y. So I could use either 0, bracket 0, bracket 1, or bracket 1, bracket 1. That's going to be my top row of pixels. Hopefully this will make a little more sense as we go along. Now, again, I'm going to have to do a for statement. So that I can basically reduce my y values for each of them by 1. So x, y values 1. Okay. For this one, I'm making sure that the upper value, so as I add one, that I can add 1 to y without it going out of bounds. So the one I want to check here is, 1, like 2 or 3. So the first bracket should either be 2 or 3, and then I'm just going to do the same thing. Add 1 to each y value. Alright, and then I'm moving the x left, so this one will be a 0, 0. So it could either be 0, 0 or 3, 0. And then to check when I want to add 1, I want to do my 1, 0. That's going to be the top right. Which really we just care. We want to make sure it's one of the right characters. So it could either be 1, bracket 0, or bracket 4, bracket 0 would work here. And think about that. Think about why that's true. Or maybe it's not true. Maybe I'm wrong. But I think it's true. Alright. Now, I've made a lot of changes, which makes me a little nervous because I couldn't really stop and test as we went along. But we'll try it and see if it works. Alright, so there's my 4 characters. Now I can move. And you see, if I move them all the way over, it doesn't go out of bounds. Alright. So there's an error somewhere. XY values referenced before assignment. It doesn't give me the... It doesn't give me the number though, like the line number. So let's try this again and see if I can figure out where it's happening. Still not sure. Let's try this. Alright, so it's going on somewhere. Right here. I put a Y instead of a U. So spelling is important. Now let's try it. Now the other thing I wasn't sure about, and I'm still not 100% sure, is if it's going to move the chaser the right way. But it seems to, right? So even though I only use that top left pixel in my player character to determine whether I should chase it left, right, up, or down, that seems to be working, right? And all my blocks move together as one character. Now this is just one way you could do this. There are a number of other ways you could have your player character be multiple pixels and still handle that. So don't think this is the only way to do that, but I thought this was a good way to show you the for statement, which is a loop, and also further kind of expand and explain hopefully a little bit more lists. Although I can understand, especially because this is a two-dimensional list, that it might seem even more confusing now. Play around with it a little bit and try changing some of those values, and I think that's one way you can start to make sense out of what we're doing here. But you can also email me if you have questions, and I'll be glad to try to help. Matt@excitecenter.org. So I hope your coding is going well, and I think now we've got a good basis for how to do this. The next thing you might think about and try on your own is making the computer character, the chaser, also be bigger than just 1 pixel, and have those pixels move. And then you have to think about collisions, like if you had a 4-character or 4-pixel computer, how do you determine when any part of that 4 pixels connects with any part of the 4 pixels of the player, and things like that. So it's a little more challenging, but it might be a fun activity to do and see if you can maybe figure out how to do that with or without a list. All right, happy coding, and enjoy the skyscraper games.